I was standing on my dock at sunrise when I saw the biggest damn yacht I'd ever encountered taking up my private slip like it owned the place. My name is Gregory Xavier, and I had saved for 5 years to buy my waterfront property at Marina del Sol in San Diego, California. The mortgage was brutal, but having my own private boat slip where I could dock my 32-foot fishing boat was worth every penny. I worked as a software engineer downtown, and those early morning fishing trips kept me sane through all the deadline stress and corporate meetings. But this Tuesday morning in late March, instead of seeing my modest boat gently bobbing where I left it the night before, I was staring at a gleaming white 50-foot yacht called the Sea Throne, occupying my entire slip. My boat had been pushed aside, tied haphazardly to someone else's dock post like an afterthought. I stood there in my fishing boots and jacket, cooler in hand, completely stunned. The yacht was massive, probably worth more than my house. It had multiple levels, tinted windows, and enough chrome to blind someone on a sunny day. And it was definitely, absolutely, 100% not supposed to be in my slip. I walked closer and saw a woman in her mid-40s emerge from the yacht's cabin. She wore designer sunglasses despite the early hour, a white linen pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, and had that distinctive haircut that screamed, "I want to speak to your manager." Her highlighted blonde hair was styled in a sharp bob that somehow looked both expensive and aggressive. "Excuse me," I called out. "You're in my slip." She turned toward me with an expression of mild annoyance, like I was a seagull making too much noise. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "I'm Gregory Xavier. I own this property and this slip. That's my boat you shoved out of the way." I pointed at my fishing boat, which was now awkwardly tied to a post that belonged to my neighbor's slip. "Oh, you must be mistaken," she said with a condescending smile. "I'm Brenda Vanderhorn, president of the Marina Estates Homeowners Association. We have authority over all common areas, and that includes marina slips." I felt my jaw tighten. "This isn't a common area. This is my private slip. It came with my deed." "Actually," she said, pulling out her phone and tapping at it with manicured nails, "according to the new HOA bylaws that were passed last month, all marina slips are now considered shared community resources, subject to assignment by the HOA board. I assigned this slip to myself because it's the largest and most accessible." "That's insane," I said. "You can't just rewrite property law with HOA bylaws. My deed specifically lists this slip." Brenda removed her sunglasses and gave me a look that could freeze water. "Mr. Xavier, is it? Perhaps you haven't been attending our HOA meetings. If you had, you would know that we're trying to create a more equitable community here. Just because you bought a property with a larger slip doesn't mean you deserve to monopolize that resource." "I didn't monopolize anything. I bought it. I pay property taxes on it. It's mine." "Well, I suggest you review the updated CC and Articles," she said. "In the meantime, my yacht will be staying right here. I've already paid this month's HOA dues, which now include marina fees. If you have a problem with it, you can bring it up at next month's meeting." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Next month? I need my slip now. I go fishing every morning before work." "Then perhaps you should have attended the March meeting where we voted on this," Brenda said dismissively. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have yoga in 20 minutes. She turned and walked back into her yacht, closing the door firmly behind her. I stood there on the dock, cooler still in hand, trying to process what had just happened. My slip, which I had paid good money for and legally owned, had been commandeered by the HOA president because she decided she wanted it. I pulled out my phone and called the harbor master's office. It was early, but Jake Morrison, the harbor master, was usually there by 6. Sure enough, he picked up on the third ring. Marina del Sol Harbor Master, Jake speaking. Jake, it's Greg Xavier. Someone parked a yacht in my slip and moved my boat. There was a pause. Someone moved your boat? Yeah, some woman named Brenda Vanderhorn. She says she's the HOA president and claims they passed some bylaw that lets them reassign private slips. Jake let out a low whistle. Brenda Vanderhorn. Yeah, I know who she is. She bought into the Marina Estates development about 6 months ago and immediately got herself elected HOA president. She's been a pain in my ass ever since, trying to claim authority over marina operations. Can she do this? Can the HOA just take over private slips? Hell no, Jake said firmly. Your slip is on your deed. I've got the marina registration right here. She's trespassing, plain and simple. I'll come down there right now. Relief flooded through me. Thanks, Jake. I really appreciate it. Don't thank me yet, he said. If she's anything like the last 3 times I've dealt with her, this is going to be a headache. 10 minutes later, Jake arrived in his harbor master truck. He was a weather-beaten man in his 60s with gray hair, a sun-darkened face, and the no-nonsense attitude of someone who had spent his entire life dealing with boats and the ocean. He carried a clipboard and wore his official harbor master jacket. "Let me see your deed," he said as he walked up. I had anticipated this and already pulled up the digital copy on my phone. Jake examined it carefully, then checked his clipboard. "Yep, slip 23 is definitely yours. Has been since you bought the place 3 years ago." He looked at the yacht. "That's her boat," that's what she said. "She came out and told me the HOA passed some bylaw that lets them reassign slips." Jake shook his head. "Can't do that. HOAs have authority over common areas and architectural guidelines, things like that. They don't have authority over deeded property. That's basic property law." He walked to the yacht and knocked loudly on the hull. "Harbor Master, I need to speak with the owner of this vessel." A moment later, Brenda emerged again, this time looking even more annoyed. "Yes, what is it, madam? I'm Jake Morrison, Marina del Sol Harbor Master. This yacht is illegally occupying a private slip. I need you to move it immediately." Brenda crossed her arms. "I'm Brenda Vanderhorn, president of the Marina Estates HOA. This slip is now under HOA management as per our updated bylaws. I have every right to be here." "No, madam, you don't," Jake said patiently. "The slip is on Mr. Xavier's deed. Your HOA has no authority to override deed restrictions or property rights. You need to move your boat now." "I will do no such thing," Brenda said. "This is an HOA matter, and you have no jurisdiction over HOA decisions." Jake's expression hardened. "Madam, I have jurisdiction over every vessel in this marina. If you don't move this yacht within the next hour, I'll have to cite you for illegal mooring. The fine is $500 per day." "You can't do that," Brenda's voice rose. "I'll have you know I'm a lawyer. I know my rights." "Then as a lawyer you should know that you're trespassing on private property," Jake said. "1 hour, madam. Move the yacht or face the citations." Brenda's face flushed red. "This is harassment. I'm being discriminated against because I'm trying to create a fair community system. I'll be filing a complaint with the county, and I'll be bringing this up with the HOA board. You'll both be hearing from our attorneys." She stormed back into her yacht and slammed the door. Jake turned to me and sighed. "Like I said, headache, but the law is on your side here, Greg. She'll have to move it or pay the fines. Most people back down once they realize I'm serious." "Thanks, Jake. I really appreciate you coming down here. It's my job," he said. "Keep me posted if she gives you any more trouble." He headed back to his truck, and I stood there watching the yacht, wondering if Brenda would actually move it. An hour passed. Then 2. She didn't budge. I had to leave for work, So I secured my fishing boat properly and drove downtown, but my mind was on the situation the entire day. When I got home that evening around 6, the yacht was still there. My boat was still pushed aside. And there was a bright orange citation sticker on the yacht's windscreen. Jake had followed through. Over the next 3 days, more citation stickers appeared. Brenda never moved the yacht. My neighbor, Tom, told me he saw her coming and going from it each day, completely ignoring the violations. The fines were racking up, now totaling $1,500. On Friday, I got a letter in my mailbox. It was from the Marina Estates HOA, signed by Brenda Vanderhorn. The letter informed me that I was in violation of HOA bylaws for failing to maintain community harmony and for harassment of an HOA board member. I was being fined $200 and required to attend a disciplinary hearing the following Wednesday. I couldn't believe it. She was fining me for complaining about her stealing my boat slip. I called my own lawyer that afternoon. His name was Marcus Chen, and he'd helped me with my house purchase 3 years ago. When I explained the situation, he actually laughed. "She's trying to fine you. For what exactly?" "Apparently for harassment and failing to maintain community harmony." "Greg, that's not a thing. She can't fine you for asserting your property rights. This is so over the line I don't even know where to start." He paused. "Forward me everything. The letter, your deed, the HOA bylaws, all of it. I'm going to send her a cease and desist letter that'll make her head spin." "What about her yacht? She's still in my slip. How long has it been?" 5 days now. And the harbor master has been citing her every day. She's up to $1,500 in fines." Marcus whistled. "Okay, here's what's going to happen. She's either going to move it voluntarily or the harbor master is going to enforce the citations. If she doesn't pay the fines and doesn't move the boat, he has the authority to remove it." "Can he really do that?" "Absolutely. Harbor masters have broad authority over marina operations and safety. If a vessel is illegally moored and the owner refuses to move it after repeated citations, the harbor master can relocate it and bill the owner for the costs. It's called an administrative tow." A small smile crossed my face. "That would be something to see." "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Marcus said. "In the meantime, don't go to that disciplinary hearing. Don't pay their fake fine. I'll handle this." That night, I drafted an email to Jake updating him on the situation and asking what his next steps would be. He responded within an hour. "Greg, I've sent Brenda 3 formal notices now. She's ignored all of them. Her fines are at $1,500 and counting. On Monday, if she hasn't moved the yacht, I'm going to post a final notice giving her 48 hours to comply. After that, I'll have the authority to cut her lines and relocate the vessel to impound. I don't like doing it, but she's left me no choice. She's not only violating your property rights, she's setting a dangerous precedent for the marina. I can't let people think they can just park wherever they want." I forwarded Jake's email to Marcus, who responded with a thumbs-up emoji and the message, "Perfect. Document everything." The weekend was torturous. Every time I looked out my window and saw that yacht in my slip, my blood pressure spiked. I couldn't use my boat. I couldn't go fishing. And Brenda continued to strut around the marina like she owned it, giving me smug looks whenever our paths crossed. On Sunday afternoon, I ran into my neighbor Tom at the community mailboxes. Tom was a retired accountant who had lived in Marina Estates for 10 years. "This thing with Brenda is crazy," he said, shaking his head. "I've never seen anything like it. Has she done stuff like this before?" I asked. "Oh yeah," Tom said. "She got elected HOA president back in October and immediately started changing everything. She raised the HOA dues by 40%, claiming we needed the money for community improvements. Then she hired her brother's landscaping company at triple the normal rate. She's been fining people left and right for stupid stuff, like having the wrong shade of white on their fence or parking their car on the street overnight. How is she getting away with it? Tom shrugged. Most people don't want to fight. They just pay the fines and move on. The few who have pushed back got slapped with even more fines for being disruptive. She's turned the HOA into her personal fiefdom. That's insane. Tell me about it. My wife and I are thinking of selling. We didn't retire to deal with this kind of stress. He looked at the yacht. But what she's doing to you is next level. She can't just take your boat slip. My lawyer says the same thing. The harbor master is going to impound her yacht if she doesn't move it by Wednesday. Tom's eyes widened. Really? Oh man, I'd love to see that. You and me both. Monday morning arrived, and Jake posted the final notice on Brenda's yacht. The bright red paper was impossible to miss. It stated clearly that the vessel was in violation of marina regulations, that the owner had 48 hours to relocate it, and that failure to comply would result in administrative action, including potential impounding. I watched from my living room window as Brenda emerged from the yacht around 9 in the morning. She read the notice, ripped it off the windscreen, crumpled it up, and threw it in the water. Then she got into her Mercedes and drove away. Jake saw the whole thing from his office and immediately came down to the dock. He retrieved the crumpled notice from the water, took photographs of it, and posted a new one. He also placed a notice on Brenda's front door at her house, which was 3 streets over from mine. Tuesday evening, I got a call from Marcus. I sent Brenda the cease and desist letter this morning via certified mail and email. She responded an hour ago. What did she say? She doubled down. She claims the HOA has sovereign authority over community resources and that you're interfering with HOA business. She also said she's filing a lawsuit against both you and the harbor master for harassment and conspiracy to deprive her of her rights. I groaned. You've got to be kidding me. She's not going to win, Marcus said. This is a frivolous lawsuit and frankly, she's opening herself up to major liability, but I wanted you to know it's coming. Don't worry about it. Let her waste her money. What about Wednesday? Is Jake really going to impound her yacht? If she doesn't move it, yes. And honestly, Greg, I think that's the best thing that could happen. It'll force this to a head and she'll have to face real consequences for once. That night, I barely slept. I kept getting up and looking out the window at the yacht, half expecting it to be gone, half hoping it would still be there so Jake could follow through. Wednesday morning arrived with clear skies and calm waters. It was perfect weather, which somehow made everything feel more dramatic. I made coffee at 5:30 and stood on my back deck, watching the marina come to life. At 6 in the morning, Jake's truck pulled into the marina parking lot. He was followed by a large towboat operated by the marina's contracted salvage company. 2 crew members were with him, along with a woman I recognized as Deputy Harbor Master Chen. They approached the yacht, and Jake began documenting everything with photographs and video. Then he knocked on the yacht's hull. Harbor Master, this is your final notice to vacate. No response. The yacht was dark and silent. Jake knocked again, louder this time. Brenda Vanderhorn, this is Harbor Master Morrison. You have 10 minutes to move this vessel or it will be impounded. Still nothing. I checked my watch. It was 6:15. The sun was starting to rise properly now, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. 10 minutes passed. Jake checked his watch, then nodded to his crew. They boarded the yacht, checking to make sure no one was inside. Once they confirmed it was empty, they began the process. The crew attached tow lines to the yacht's bow and stern. Jake took bolt cutters and approached the lines securing the yacht to my dock. He positioned himself, looked one more time to make sure everything was clear, and then cut the first line. The sound was surprisingly loud, a sharp snap followed by the line whipping free. He cut the second line, then the third. The yacht began to drift slightly, held now only by the tow boat's lines. "Secure it," Jake called out. The crew maneuvered the tow boat, slowly pulling the yacht away from my slip. It was a delicate operation, the massive yacht moving inch by inch away from the dock. I watched, hardly breathing, as my slip gradually cleared. And then, just as the yacht was halfway out, Brenda's Mercedes came screaming into the parking lot. "Stop!" she shrieked, running toward the dock in high heels and what looked like expensive yoga clothes. "What are you doing? Stop right now!" Jake turned to face her, his expression calm. "Miss Vanderhorn, your vessel has been impounded due to repeated violations of marina regulations and failure to comply with lawful orders." "You can't do this." Brenda's face was purple with rage. "This is theft. This is destruction of property. I'll have your job. I'll sue the county." "Madam, you were given multiple notices over 7 days. You chose to ignore all of them. Your vessel is being relocated to the impound area. You'll receive information on how to retrieve it and pay the outstanding fines." "Outstanding fines? I'm not paying anything. This is illegal." "Madam, you currently owe $1,900 in mooring violation fines, plus impound fees of $500, plus daily storage fees of $150. If you want your yacht back, you'll need to pay those fees and provide proof that you have a legal slip to moor it in." Brenda turned and saw me standing on my deck, her eyes narrowed with pure hatred. "You," she screamed. "This is your fault. You orchestrated this. You're colluding with the harbor master to steal my property, Miss Vanderhorn. Mr. Xavier has nothing to do with this," Jake said firmly. "This is a marina enforcement action based on your violations. Now please step back so my crew can work safely." "I will not step back. I'm calling the police. I'm calling my lawyers. I'm calling the news." She pulled out her phone and started dialing frantically. Jake just shook his head and continued supervising the tow. The yacht was fully clear of my slip now, being carefully maneuvered toward the impound area at the far end of the marina. 2 police officers arrived about 15 minutes later, responding to Brenda's call. She immediately rushed to them, gesturing wildly and talking a mile a minute about theft and corruption and conspiracy. The officers listened patiently, then spoke with Jake. He showed them all his documentation, the notices, the photographs, the citation records. After about 10 minutes of review, one of the officers turned to Brenda. "Madam, the harbor master has acted within his authority. This is a civil matter regarding unpaid fines and illegal mooring. If you want to dispute it, you'll need to do so through the proper administrative channels." "This is ridiculous," Brenda shouted. "He's in cahoots with that man." She pointed at me. "They're trying to deprive me of my rights as HOA president. Madam, your position as HOA president doesn't grant you special privileges in the marina. If you continue to be disruptive, we'll have to ask you to leave." Brenda looked like she might explode. Her face was red, her hands were shaking, and she seemed on the verge of tears or violence. I couldn't tell which. "Fine," she spat. "Fine, but this isn't over, not by a long shot. I'm going to make sure every single one of you pays for this." She stormed back to her Mercedes and peeled out of the parking lot, tires squealing. The officers shook their heads. One of them walked over to where I was standing on my deck. "You're the slip owner?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "Gregory Xavier. You might want to be careful. That woman seems unstable. If she bothers you or makes threats, call us immediately." "I will, thank you." After the police left, Jake came over. He looked tired but satisfied. "Well, that's done. Your slip is clear." "I can't thank you enough, Jake. Just doing my job. But I've got to tell you, Greg, I've been harbor master here for 20 years, and I've never seen someone as stubborn as Brenda Vanderhorn. Most people back down when they realize they are in the wrong. She just keeps doubling down. My neighbor says she's been like this since she became HOA president. Doesn't surprise me. Well, her yacht is in impound now. She's going to have to pay up or it stays there, and those daily storage fees add up fast. Over the next few days, things escalated in ways I never could have predicted. First, I got another letter from the HOA, this time informing me that I was being fined $500 for conspiracy to deprive the HOA of community resources, and another $500 for causing a public disturbance. The letter also stated that my voting rights in the HOA were suspended pending a full board review. Marcus immediately sent back a blistering response, threatening to sue the HOA for harassment, abuse of authority, and violation of state HOA laws. He also filed a formal complaint with the county HOA ombudsman. Then, Brenda started a campaign of petty harassment. She filed noise complaints against me with the police, claiming I was running loud power tools at 3 in the morning. When the police investigated and found nothing, she filed more complaints. She claimed my fence was 6 inches over the property line. She claimed my boat was leaking oil into the water. She claimed my house was an eyesore that violated community standards. Every complaint was investigated and found to be baseless, but it was exhausting. I was spending hours dealing with inspectors, police visits, and HOA letters. Tom stopped by one evening to commiserate. She's doing the same thing to anyone she thinks might side with you. She sent violation notices to half the street for having weeds in their lawns. Mrs. Patterson got fined for having a pink flamingo decoration that's been in her yard for 8 years. This is insane. How long can she keep this up? Until someone stops her, Tom said. Look, a bunch of us have been talking. We're organizing a special HOA meeting to vote her out. We need 60% of homeowners to call for it, and we're almost there. Really? That's great. Yeah, well, it's about time. She's made life miserable for everyone, but what she did to you crossed a line. Stealing your boat slip, impounding her yacht, that woke people up. The special meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday evening at the community center. I wasn't sure what to expect, but Marcus advised me to attend and document everything. The community center was packed. I'd never seen so many of my neighbors in one place. There had to be at least 100 people crammed into the room, and the energy was tense. Brenda stood at the front, looking defiant. She'd brought her own lawyer, a nervous-looking man in an expensive suit who kept glancing at his phone. Tom, who was leading the effort to remove Brenda, stood up and addressed the room. Thank you all for coming. We're here tonight because the current HOA board, led by President Brenda Vanderhorn, has exceeded its authority and created a hostile environment in our community. We're calling for a vote of no confidence and immediate removal of the entire board, followed by new elections. Brenda stood up. This is a witch hunt. I've done nothing but try to improve our community. I've raised standards, increased property values, and brought organization to what was a chaotic situation. You've raised HOA dues by 40%, someone shouted from the back. You fined me $200 for parking on my own driveway, another voice called out. You tried to steal Greg's boat slip. The room erupted in angry voices. Brenda's face flushed red. Order, we need order, she shouted, banging a gavel on the podium. Tom waited for the noise to die down. Let's do this properly. I'm making a formal motion to remove the current HOA board and hold immediate elections for new officers. Do I have a second? Seconded. At least 5 voices called out. All in favor. The room was a sea of raised hands. I counted quickly. It had to be at least 90% of the people there. All opposed. Only Brenda and 2 other people raised their hands. The motion passes, Tom said. The board is removed effective immediately. We'll now hold nominations for a new board. Brenda stood up, her face twisted with fury. This is illegal. You can't do this. I'm calling the police. Actually, we can, Marcus said, standing up from where he'd been sitting near the back. I'm Marcus Chen, attorney. I've reviewed the HOA bylaws and this vote is completely legal. A supermajority of homeowners can remove the board at any time with proper notice, which was given. Miss Vanderhorn, you're no longer HOA president. This is a coup, Brenda screamed. I'll sue every single one of you. You're welcome to try, Marcus said calmly, but I'd advise against it. You're already facing potential legal action for abuse of authority and harassment. Brenda grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door, but before she could leave, 2 police officers entered. Behind them was Jake Morrison, the harbor master. Brenda Vanderhorn, one of the officers said. She stopped. What, madam, we have a warrant for your arrest. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. What for what? The officer pulled out a document. You're being charged with 3 counts of filing false police reports, 1 count of harassment, and 1 count of theft by deception relating to HOA funds. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back. This is ridiculous, Brenda shrieked. I'm being persecuted. This is all because of him, she pointed at me. Madam, these charges stem from an investigation by the county and have nothing to do with Mr. Xavier. Now please turn around. Brenda's lawyer stepped forward. Officers, I'm her attorney. Can we arrange for her to turn herself in tomorrow? No, sir. The warrant is active now. We need to take her into custody. What happened next was almost surreal. Brenda tried to run. In her high heels, she actually tried to push past the officers and sprint for the door. She made it about 3 steps before one of the officers caught her arm. She started screaming and flailing, and it took both officers to get her in handcuffs. Police brutality, she screamed as they led her out. I'm being assaulted. Someone film this. This is illegal. The room full of neighbors just stared in shock as she was escorted out, still screaming threats and accusations. Jake stepped to the front of the room. Sorry for the disruption, folks. The investigation into Miss Vanderhorn started about a week ago when we discovered she'd been submitting false complaints to multiple county agencies. When we dug deeper, we found evidence she'd been embezzling HOA funds. The county prosecutor decided to move forward with charges today. Tom looked stunned. Embezzling. How much? I can't give you specific details since it's an ongoing case, but let's just say it's significant. You'll want to get a forensic accountant to review the HOA books. After Jake left, the meeting continued, but everyone was dazed. We went through the motions of electing a new board. Tom was elected president, and several other long-time residents took the other positions. The first order of business was to rescind all of Brenda's bogus bylaws and fines. Any fines issued in the last 6 months are hereby voided, Tom announced. We'll be reviewing the HOA finances and we'll keep everyone updated. And Greg, I want to formally apologize on behalf of the community for what you went through. Your boat slip is yours, and it always was. The room applauded, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The investigation into Brenda revealed she'd stolen over $60,000 from the HOA over 6 months. She'd been creating fake invoices for community improvements that never happened, paying her relatives for services never rendered, and pocketing the difference. The inflated HOA dues had been funding her lifestyle, including the yacht. The yacht, it turned out, wasn't even fully paid for. She'd financed it, and then defaulted on payments when she couldn't keep up. The marina impound fees had grown to over $3,000, and the boat was eventually seized by the finance company. Brenda was arraigned on multiple charges including embezzlement, theft, filing false reports, and fraud. Her lawyer tried to get the charges reduced, but the evidence was overwhelming. She'd kept terrible records, apparently assuming no one would ever question her. In early May, about 6 weeks after the yacht incident, I was finally able to get back to my normal routine. My boat was in my slip where it belonged. I was going fishing every morning before work. The new HOA board had reduced dues back to reasonable levels and was working to restore community trust. One Saturday morning, I ran into Jake at the marina coffee shop. "How are you doing, Greg?" he asked. "Much better." "It's amazing what life is like when you're not constantly fighting off a deranged HOA president," Jake laughed. "I bet. For what it's worth, you handled that whole situation really well. A lot of people would have just given in." "I almost did, but it was the principle of it. She couldn't just steal my property." "No, she couldn't, and now she's facing the consequences." He took a sip of his coffee. "You know, in all my years as harbor master, that was the most satisfying line cutting I've ever done. At dawn, no less. Very dramatic. Hey, that's when the tow company could come. But yeah, it did feel pretty badass." We both laughed, and for the first time in weeks, I felt genuinely relaxed. The legal proceedings against Brenda dragged on through the summer. Marcus kept me updated, though I tried not to obsess over it. She was facing serious prison time, and her assets were being seized to repay what she'd stolen. In August, she accepted a plea deal. She pled guilty to embezzlement and fraud charges in exchange for the harassment and false report charges being dropped. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA, which would likely bankrupt her. I didn't attend the sentencing. I'd moved on with my life, but Tom went, and he told me about it that evening. She gave this whole speech about how she was trying to help the community and got in over her head, he said. She claimed she'd been planning to pay everything back. The judge wasn't buying it. He said she'd abused a position of trust and caused tremendous harm to dozens of families. 3 years, Greg. She's going to prison for 3 years. How do you feel about it? I asked. Tom was quiet for a moment. Honestly, relieved. She needed to face consequences. What she did was serious, but also a little sad. She threw her whole life away because she couldn't stop being controlling and greedy. Yeah, it's a mess. On the bright side, the HOA is actually functional now. We're planning a community barbecue next month. You should come. I'll be there. The barbecue in September was a turning point for the neighborhood. People who had been afraid to socialize under Brenda's reign of terror were finally relaxing and getting to know each other. Kids were playing in the common areas. Someone brought a guitar. It felt like a real community for the first time since I'd moved in. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman who'd been fined for her pink flamingo, approached me with a plate of cookies. "Mr. Xavier, I wanted to thank you," she said. "Thank me. For what?" "For standing up to that horrible woman. You could have just moved your boat and let her win, but you didn't. You fought back, and that gave the rest of us courage to do the same." "I just wanted my boat slipped back," I said, feeling a bit embarrassed. "It was more than that, dear. You showed us we didn't have to accept being bullied." That matters. As summer turned to fall, life in Marina Estates settled into a comfortable rhythm. The new HOA board was transparent and reasonable. Community meetings were well attended and actually productive. The neighborhood felt alive in a way it hadn't before. I continued my morning fishing routine, now without any drama. My slip was mine. My boat was safe. And every time I walked down to the dock at sunrise, I remembered the morning Jake cut Brenda's lines and towed that yacht away. It had been one of the most stressful periods of my life, but also strangely empowering. I'd learned that standing up for your rights matters, that documentation and proper legal channels work, and that most people will do the right thing when given the chance. In October, I got a letter from the county. It was a formal notice that all charges and fines related to the Vanderhorn case had been resolved. The HOA had received a partial restitution payment from the seizure of Brenda's assets. My legal fees, which Marcus had kept reasonable, were being reimbursed by the HOA's insurance policy. I stood on my deck that evening, watching the sunset over the marina, and felt a deep sense of peace. The nightmare was truly over. The story could have ended there, but there was one more strange twist. In early November, I received a handwritten letter. It was postmarked from the California Women's Correctional Facility. The return address showed Brenda Vanderhorn as the sender. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it carefully, half expecting it to be filled with threats or continued delusions. Instead, it was an apology. The letter was 3 pages long, written in surprisingly neat handwriting. Brenda detailed how she'd spiraled after her divorce 2 years earlier. She'd bought the Marina Estates property with her settlement money, determined to create a perfect life. When she became HOA president, she'd become obsessed with control, seeing it as a way to prove she could succeed at something. She wrote about how the power had gone to her head, how she'd started justifying increasingly unethical behavior. She'd convinced herself that she deserved the boat slip, that she deserved the extra money, that anyone who opposed her was the enemy. "I know you have no reason to forgive me," the letter concluded. "What I did to you was wrong. What I did to the entire community was wrong. I've lost everything: my freedom, my money, my reputation, my self-respect. I'm not asking for sympathy. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. You were right to fight back. You were right about everything. I hope you're able to enjoy your boat and your home without any more interference from crazy HOA presidents. Sincerely, Brenda." I read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. I wasn't sure what I would even say. But somehow, receiving that apology lifted a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying. Maybe she really had learned something. Maybe she hadn't. Either way, it was no longer my problem. December brought cooler weather to San Diego, though nothing like the winters I'd experienced growing up in Colorado. The marina was quieter in winter, fewer tourists and weekend boaters. I liked it better this way, more peaceful, more space to think. On Christmas morning, I took my boat out at sunrise, something I'd been planning to do since the yacht incident nearly 9 months earlier. The water was calm, the sky was clear, and I had the ocean almost entirely to myself. I caught 3 decent-sized bass and a small halibut. As I reeled in the last fish, I thought about everything that had happened. The stress, the anger, the confrontations, the eventual justice. It had been exhausting, but it had also taught me something important about standing up for yourself. Tom and his wife invited me over for Christmas dinner that afternoon. Several other neighbors were there too, including Mrs. Patterson and her pink flamingo. We ate too much, laughed a lot, and someone told the story of the yacht incident for the benefit of newer residents who'd moved in after the drama. "Greg just stood his ground," Tom said, gesturing with his wine glass. "Didn't matter that she was HOA president or that she had lawyers or money. He knew his rights and he defended them properly. And the harbor master cut her lines at dawn," Mrs. Patterson added with obvious delight. "I watched the whole thing from my window. It was better than any movie." Everyone laughed, and I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the wine. This was what community was supposed to feel like. Not rules and fines and power trips, but people looking out for each other, supporting each other, enjoying each other's company. As the new year arrived, Marina Estates continued to thrive under the new HOA leadership. Tom implemented regular community events, movie nights, block parties, beach cleanups. Participation was voluntary. Fines were rare and only for legitimate violations, and people actually wanted to be involved. The boat slip that had caused so much drama remained mine, as it had always been. My fishing boat sat there peacefully, ready for early morning adventures. And the dock where Brenda's yacht had illegally moored was just empty space, serving as a reminder of what happens when someone thinks they are above the law. I never saw Brenda again after that night at the community center when she was arrested. According to Tom, who kept tabs on the case, she served her time quietly and was eventually released on parole. She moved out of state, presumably to start over somewhere without the weight of her reputation. The $60,000 she'd embezzled was never fully recovered. The HOA got back about 40% through asset seizures, and the rest was covered by insurance. The new board implemented strict financial controls and regular audits to prevent anything like it from happening again. As for me, I continued my quiet life. Work, fishing, home, repeat. But with an important difference, I now knew I could stand up to bullies, that the system could work if you persisted, and that community mattered more than rules. The marina remained my sanctuary, the place where I could clear my head and find peace. Every morning when I walked down to my boat, I appreciated it a little more, knowing what I'd gone through to keep it. And sometimes, when I was out on the water at sunrise, I'd think about that February morning when I'd arrived to find a yacht in my slip. I'd think about Brenda's arrogance, Jake's determination, the community's eventual uprising. I'd think about how a simple property dispute had revealed so much about human nature, the good and the bad. The good had won in the end. It didn't always, I knew that. But this time it had, and that was worth remembering. 1 year after the yacht incident, the Marina Estates community held a special anniversary barbecue. It wasn't officially to celebrate Brenda's removal, that would have been tacky, but everyone knew what it represented. The event was on a Saturday in late February, and the turnout was huge. Jake Morrison showed up as a special guest. The new HOA board had invited him to thank him officially for his role in enforcing marina regulations and supporting the community during a difficult time. Tom gave a short speech. A year ago, our community was in crisis. We had a leader who forgot that leadership is about service, not control. We had fear instead of cooperation, rules instead of relationships. One person stood up and said enough, and that started a chain reaction that changed everything. Greg, would you come up here? I really didn't want to, but everyone was applauding, so I made my way to the front. Tom handed me a plaque. It read, "To Gregory Xavier, for defending property rights, inspiring community action, and reminding us all that ordinary citizens can stand up to injustice." Marina Estates Community, February 2026. I didn't do anything special, I said into the microphone. I just wanted my boat slipped back. That's exactly the point, Tom said. You didn't think you were starting a revolution. You just knew something was wrong and you stood up for yourself. That's what regular people have to do. That's how communities stay healthy. More applause. I shook hands with Tom, thanked everyone, and gratefully stepped away from the microphone. Public speaking was not my thing. But as I stood there watching my neighbors enjoy the barbecue, seeing kids playing, couples chatting, the general atmosphere of peace and goodwill, I felt proud. Not of myself particularly, but of what we'd all accomplished together. Jake came over and handed me a beer. Hell of a year, huh? That's one way to put it. You know what the funny thing is, he said. I deal with boat disputes all the time. People mooring in the wrong spot, arguments over slip assignments, all kinds of drama, but I've never had to actually cut someone's lines and impound their yacht at dawn. That was a first. Did you get in any trouble for it? Nope. Everything was by the book. My supervisors reviewed the case and said I handled it perfectly. Brenda tried to file a complaint, but it went nowhere. Good. You saved me from months more of hell. Just doing my job, Jake said. But between you and me, it was pretty satisfying. We clinked our beer bottles together and watched the sunset over the marina. Life moved on. Spring brought warmer weather and better fishing. The marina filled up with seasonal residents and tourists. I got a promotion at work, which meant more money but also more responsibility. I handled it better than I would have before the Brenda situation. That experience had given me more confidence in dealing with difficult people and challenging situations. In April, Marcus called me with unexpected news. Hey Greg, remember that lawsuit Brenda threatened against you and Jake? Yeah, she never filed it though, right? Actually, she did. Her lawyer filed it 2 days before she got arrested. It's been sitting in the system this whole time. The court just formally dismissed it with prejudice, meaning she can never refile. I wanted to let you know. I didn't even know it was still pending. It wasn't really. It was a garbage lawsuit with no merit, but now it's officially dead. You're completely clear. Thanks for handling all of this, Marcus. I know I've said it before, but I really appreciate everything you did. Happy to help. It's not often I get to work on a case that's so clearly right versus wrong. Usually there's more gray area. But this. Brenda was just flat out in the wrong and you were in the right. Easy case to fight. After we hung up, I felt a final piece of closure click into place. The legal loose ends were tied up. Brenda was serving her sentence. The HOA was functional. My boat slip was mine. Everything was as it should be. That evening I took my boat out for a sunset cruise, something I rarely did. The water was glass calm, reflecting the orange and pink sky like a mirror. I cut the engine and just drifted for a while, listening to the water lap against the hull. A year ago, I'd been stressed and angry, fighting for something that should have been simple. Now I was here, peaceful and content, with that fight long behind me. The struggle had been worth it, not just for the practical outcome, but for what it had taught me about resilience and community. I thought about Brenda, sitting in a prison cell somewhere, dealing with the consequences of her choices. I hoped she was genuinely learning and growing, that her apology had been real. But even if it hadn't been, even if she came out of prison unchanged, it didn't affect my life anymore. I'd moved on. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars appeared, I started the engine and headed back to my slip. The marina lights were coming on, creating pools of yellow warmth on the dark water. My slip was right where it had always been, waiting for me. I docked the boat with practiced ease, secured the lines, and gathered my gear. Walking back to my house, I passed Tom's place. He was on his front porch with his wife, enjoying the evening. "Good fishing," he called out. "Didn't fish this time, just cruised around. Beautiful evening for it." "Come have a beer with us." I joined them on their porch, and we talked about nothing important: sports, weather, neighborhood gossip, normal conversation between neighbors, the kind of easy interaction that Brenda's rain had nearly destroyed. This was what she'd never understood, I thought. Community wasn't about control or rules or making everyone conform to your vision. It was about people living their lives side by side, helping each other when needed, leaving each other alone when desired, and generally treating each other with basic respect. It wasn't complicated. But somehow she'd made it complicated. And in doing so, she destroyed her own life and nearly destroyed our community. But we'd survived. More than survived, we'd thrived. The Marina Estates community was stronger now than it had been before Brenda, more connected, more engaged. Adversity had brought us together instead of tearing us apart. As I walked home later that night, full of good beer and good conversation, I looked out at the marina one more time. The boats bobbed gently in their slips. The water was calm. Everything was in its right place. My boat was in my slip. Brenda was in prison. Justice had been served. Life was good, and somewhere in California the sun would rise tomorrow morning and I'd be out on the water fishing, exactly as I was supposed to be. No HOA president could take that away from me. No yacht would block my slip. No drama would disrupt my peace. I'd fought for that peace, and I'd won. And that made every sunrise on the water taste just a little bit sweeter. The story of the yacht in my slip became local legend in Marina Estates. New residents heard about it during HOA orientations, usually with embellishments that made it more dramatic than it actually was. Some versions had Brenda threatening Jake with a gun. Others had me physically confronting her. The truth was dramatic enough without exaggeration, but people seemed to enjoy the mythology. I didn't mind. If the story served as a cautionary tale about HOA overreach, that was fine by me. If it reminded people to stand up for their rights, even better. 2 years after the incident, I was still living in the same house, still fishing from the same boat, still working the same job with the same company. Some people might find that monotonous, but I found it comforting. Stability, I'd learned, was underrated. The Marina Estates, HOA under Tom's leadership, continued to function smoothly. Dues were reasonable, rules were fair, and problems were solved through communication rather than fines. It wasn't perfect, no organization of humans ever is, but it was functional and respectful. Mrs. Patterson still had her pink flamingo. Tom still organized community events. Jake still managed the marina with quiet competence. And I still went fishing every morning before work. Weather permitting, the boat slip that had caused so much trouble remained mine, legally and actually. The deed was in my safe deposit box. The registration was current. And most importantly, my boat was in it, ready for another day on the water. That's really all I'd ever wanted. Not drama, not attention, not to be a community hero. Just the simple right to use the property I'd legally purchased. The fact that defending that right had required lawyers, police involvement, and a yacht being towed away at dawn was ridiculous, but necessary. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if I just accepted Brenda's power grab. If I'd moved my boat and let her have the slip. Maybe she wouldn't have been caught embezzling. Maybe she'd still be HOA president, making everyone's lives miserable. Or maybe someone else would have stood up eventually. Maybe the embezzlement would have been discovered some other way. It was impossible to know. What I did know was that I'd done the right thing. Not the easy thing, but the right thing. And that mattered. As the years passed and the memory faded from sharp detail to comfortable anecdote, one image stayed crystal clear in my mind. The moment Jake cut those lines at dawn. The snap of the bolt cutters. The whip of the rope. The yacht slowly drifting free from my slip. It was, in its way, a perfect metaphor. Sometimes you have to cut the lines that bind you to toxic people and situations. Sometimes you have to take decisive action, even when it's uncomfortable. Sometimes standing up for yourself is the only option. Brenda had tried to tie her yacht to my dock, tried to tie her control to my property, tried to tie her authority to my rights. Jake had cut those lines, literally and figuratively. And in doing so, he'd freed not just me, but an entire community. The sun rises every morning over San Diego Bay. The water moves with the tides. Boats come and go. And in slip 23 at Marina del Sol, my fishing boat sits peacefully, ready for another day. That's how the story ends. Not with grand drama or sweeping changes, but with quiet normalcy. My boat in my slip where it belongs. A community functioning as it should. Justice served, lessons learned, life continuing. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. And on clear mornings when I head down to the dock at dawn, when the light is just right and the water is calm, I swear I can still hear the echo of those bolt cutters snapping, cutting away the ties that never should have been there in the first place. That sound means freedom. That sound means justice. That sound means home. My name is Gregory Xavier. I own a house at Marina del Sol in San Diego, and nobody, not even the HOA president, can take that away from me. Because I know my rights, I have good people supporting me, and I'm willing to stand up for what's mine. That's the lesson Brenda Vanderhorn learned the hard way when the harbor master cut her lines at dawn. And it's a lesson I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. The marina is quiet now. My slip is mine. And every sunrise is a reminder that sometimes standing your ground is the only way to find peace.